Not knowing is true knowledge. Presuming to know is a disease. First, realize you are sick, then you can move toward health. Do you think you know? Do you think you know something? What does it mean when you think you know something? Well, it's not good, my friend. If you think you know, you're trapped. If you think you know, you're trapped in the illusion. First of all, you're thinking. Second of all, you're attached. You're attached to knowing. When you think you know, you're limiting your perspective, right? This is the center of the circle. This is higher self. This is the highest divine perspective. This is God. We want to be here. This is what happens when we stop thinking, when we're present. When we think we know something, we're limiting our perspective. If we're stuck in our ego and we think we know something, we'll never see the truth because there's always a higher perspective. What happens when we think we know and we were told a lie? So we got a whole world full of egomaniacs who think they know so they can never see the truth. Not their fault, right? It's all a program. From the time we're born, we're hardened into this program of thinking we know. Our egos are inflated. So we think we're somebody. We have all these attachments. We think we're somebody doing something. We think we know. And when we think we know, we can't see the truth, right? For instance, let's talk about diet, right? When people all over the world getting sick, getting disease, getting health issues, but they think they know. So if you try to show them another way, a lot of people, they can't see the truth because they're caught in their ego. They're caught in a lower perspective. So if you're in a lower perspective, you can't see the truth. So if you think you know anything, you're trapped. You're not going to be seeing from the highest perspective. The highest perspective doesn't know anything. You have to see, you have to be able to say, I observe this. I say, this makes the most sense. I'm observing it, but I'm not attaching myself to it because I don't know anything. Every day I tell myself, I don't know anything. I'm just, you can go by your intuition. You can listen to yourself. You can empty your mind and you may gain some better understanding, right? So if you think you know something, you're trapped. And you can tell right away when someone thinks they know. Because anyone who tries to argue with you, anyone who's trying, why do people try to argue? Perspectives. They think they know. Well, give it all up. Let's just say, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm right. It doesn't matter. That's all the ego. The ego is trying to argue. The ego wants to know. When people try to argue, that's just their ego having a conflict with their knowing because they think they know. That's why people on the internet will leave comments trying to correct you on things. That's their ego thinking they know. You got to detach yourself from all that. If you want to escape coming back time after time again, if you want to dissolve your ego, if you want to be higher self, we got to detach ourselves from knowing. And remember, it's nobody's fault that we think we know. It's part of the program. We're born into a world that inflates our egos and makes us think we're somebody and that we know. So we're trapped. We're born into this trap, right? This knowing trap, thinking we're somebody, thinking we have control. And all these things are related to being attached. And when we're attached to anything, we're in a trap. We're always going to be held in lower perspective. If you think you know anything, you're always going to be held in lower perspectives. You got to give it all up, right? We got to empty the mind, right? When we think we know, we're trapped. So what do? How do we break free from this? How do we see the truth? How do we go from not being able to see the truth to being able to see the truth? Well, we got to start dissolving the ego, right? I don't have to, for instance, my goal is not to teach the truth necessarily, the truth about certain things. I don't have to because What I'm teaching is teaching people how to see the truth themselves through doing the work. If we do the work of presence and purification, and we dissolve the ego by staying present, eventually people will be able to see the truth themselves. That's why this is so important, because we're trapped in a world of lower perspectives and of lies and of ego. That's all part of the illusion, right? If we want to be able to see the truth, we have to dissolve the ego. We have to break free from these perspectives. And a lot of times that comes from suffering, right? Now, I'm not saying not to present the truth at all. There's plenty of people presenting the truth, which is good. Truth destroys prison walls, right? That can happen too. But at the same time, a lot of people can't see and hear and accept the truth. There's many reasons for that, because they can be stuck and they're suppressing certain emotions certain ways, like food, right? People can't accept certain truths about the diet because they're suppressing emotions, and they got their ego, and they got all and they're stimulating themselves, right? All these different things. That's a different video. I want to make a different video about why people struggle with changing their diet or accepting certain things. Why can't people see the truth when we're like, well, that's common sense. Why can't people see this? Why can't people accept these truths? I don't understand. Why can't people accept the truth about, injecting babies with toxic pharmaceuticals is not good? Everybody thinks they know. Everybody's caught in their ego. Not their fault, right? Their egos have been fed, and they've been hardened. They have hardened egos, and they think they know. So they can't accept the truth because they're caught in lower perspectives. And as long as you're trapped in the ego, you'll never know the truth. You have to give up your ego. You got to give up your attachment to thinking you're somebody and you know something, or else you'll never know the highest truth. Remember, there's always a higher perspective, the perspective of God. The divine perspective, higher self, is standing in the middle of the circle, doesn't know, has no attachments. That way you're the highest truth. You're the highest truth, and you will start to see the truth about everything. You don't have to seek, you don't have to search for it. You'll start to understand things, and it'll start to come to you naturally. So seeing the truth first starts with us, right? First, we work on ourselves through presence and purification, right? Starting to dissolve our ego, moving closer to breaking through our own, I don't know why I erased that, breaking through our own lower perspectives, moving toward the center of the circle. And the closer we get to the center of the circle, the more we can channel the divine and help others break through their hardened perspectives by giving them a little bit of light, a little bit of help on their journeys. And eventually, they'll be able to see the truth about certain things themselves, right? So this is how we bring the truth to people. This is how we help people. Because remember, we can't change people's consciousness. But you shouldn't try to change people's consciousness. What we can do is provide assistance in a way, right? For when they're ready on their path, that could help them along. And they're still going to have to do the work themselves. We can't do anything for them, and they're still going to have to go through the experience themselves on all this. But what we can do is through raising our own consciousness and using our own experiences and lessons and wisdom, and allowing the divine to flow through us by emptying our mind and gaining that divine understanding and that divine inspirations and the divine perspective. We can use this to help others. And slowly we start raising the consciousness of the whole planet. Well, not raising it, but we're raising it, right? We're helping raise it. We're helping those who are starting, because everybody is somewhere on the journey of awakening, right? Everybody's somewhere on the spectrum. I mean, some people might be really low and they may be stuck in hard. Some people may have to be coming back a lot more times to break free from some of these hardened programs and perspectives. That's okay. But we can still do the work. We can still break free from our own hardened perspectives through presence and purification, dissolve our ego, get close to the center of that circle, keep getting closer, keep stepping back, letting go of our attachments, right? We have to be able to recognize where we're attached and be like, do I think it's hard. Our ego doesn't want to let us admit that we don't know something because our ego is the one who thinks it knows, right? So if we think we know something, we're trapped. We got to admit that. Like with the diet, a lot of people get trapped with the diet is just one of the main examples because everybody is on different spectrums with what they think humans are supposed to eat, right? So we got to be careful because no matter what we think, you got to step back far enough and detach yourself enough where we can regain our common sense. See, the problem is when we think we know, we lose common sense. When we're trapped in those lower perspectives, we lose. That's how the school system kind of destroys common sense because you create all these egos who think they know, and so no matter what common sense evidence or truths you can present to people, because they're trapped in their ego and they think they know, they can't accept it, right? This is how it destroys common sense. So we got to be careful. Any attachments we have could be destroying our common sense. So we got to try to keep stepping back and saying, I don't know. I'm just going to observe everything. I don't know. Okay, tell me this thing and let me try to use just common sense. I'm not attached to anything. Like with diet, for me eating fruit, right, makes common sense to me. I'm not attached to anything. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you when you ask me what's the ideal diet for humans. On one end I'm going to say I don't know. I don't know anything, right? I say that to myself, I don't know. On the other end, I'll say, from my perspective, from my experience, from what I've seen, from all the endless cases of people healing themselves on fruit, right, on grapes, on juice fasting, on water fasting, from what I've seen, from my experience, and from my common sense, it makes sense to me to eat fruit, right? That's just my perspective. Everybody's going to have a slightly different perspective, but I'm trying not to attach myself to it either. If I see something else that my common sense thinks has more common sense, then maybe I'll have considered that. But nothing else makes. What are some aspects that I consider from my perspective, my common sense? Like our hands are made for picking and peeling fruit, right? We have no claws or fangs. To me, this is just, again, I'm just giving. This is just an example I'm using of trying to regain my common sense, right? And not resisting and attaching myself to anything, right? Without weapons, tools, or fire, how do we procure or ingest food? No animals use weapon, tools, or fire. This is just examples of me that I'm trying to use common sense. It's just, for me, it just makes sense because no animal cooks its food. No animals, there's no omnivores without claws or fangs. I don't see how a human's gonna kill a cow with his bare hands and eat it raw without fire or without weapons or tools. To me, that just doesn't make sense. That's all. That's my perspective, right? Everybody's going to have different perspectives, but I'm also not attaching myself to it. I don't think I know anything. I don't think I know the shape of the earth. Everybody thinks it doesn't, you can say from my experience, what I've seen, this is my best guess. But that's one of those things where unless you've been to a certain area, a very high area, you're not going to know, really. You're just going off whatever somebody's telling you. You got to be careful. That's why if we're standing in the center of the circle, we don't know anything. We're not attached to knowing anything. We're not even trying to know anything. We're not even to pretend we know anything. We can observe. We can be our nature running off, right? We can use our common sense, our divine. We can use our intuition. We can allow the divine to guide us certain areas, right? The divine, the universe, specifically guided me to eating fruit and regenerative detoxification and being a fruitarian. The universe gave me the Dr. Morse, my beautiful Dr. Morse, who showed me through endless examples of people healing themselves on fruit and all these other great books that I've read. We have Dr. Doug Graham. This is just my perspective, though. If people have a different perspective and they think we should eat meat, I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to do any of that. That's your choice. You do whatever you want. Again, just try to detach yourself from everything. right? Try to keep stepping back. Eventually your perspective may change. Don't be so attached that you can't change, because change is the only thing constant, right? We got to be willing to, I'm almost at the point where I'm willing to change on a dime. If I see something that makes sense to me that I missed, it's like, oh, that makes sense. Well, how did I miss that? It's common sense that we should be doing this, that, or the other thing. I may change. But for me, at this point, I've been studying certain things for a while. I don't know if that can happen, because I've seen enough information, right? But at this point, I'm not taking in any more information. I'm done, right? The divine has led me where it's going to lead me, and if it's going to lead me somewhere else, it'll lead me somewhere else, right? We have to be open to these things. What we got to do is detach ourselves from everything, from our ego, from knowing, from anything, and just allow the divine to guide us, and not even worry about any of this stuff anyway. Not even worry about it. Just detach. We have to tear away these attachments that the ego has got us stuck in, thinking we know anything. Right? And everybody, all these people debating each other, they're just out here thinking they're stuck in their ego, thinking they know. You know what I mean? You gotta give it all up. You gotta empty the mind, right? That's it. It all comes down to emptying the mind, letting it all go, right? Dissolving the ego. Presence and purification will take care of any of these quagmires we get in, right? Any of these attachments. Just keep purifying the body. Well, what if I don't know what to eat to purify the body? Well, you got to use your intuition and keep meditating, keep doing presence, and maybe the divine will give you guidance. The divine will show you where you're supposed to go, and you can use that as an example. Or find someone you resonate with who's saying something, and try to use your common sense. That's all we can ever do, in your intuition, right? Just do the best you can. It's okay if others have different perspectives. If someone has a different perspective than me and that makes sense to you, I don't really care. I don't care. I'm trying not to care about any of it. I'm not attached to I'm not attached to you, to anybody else doing anything, right? I'm still going to teach what I know and from my experience. So when I teach about diet and purification, I'm still going to teach about fruits, berries, and melons, and cleaning the body and getting the kidneys to filter and regenerative detoxification. I'm still going to teach about that, because that's what I know, and that's what I've experienced, and that's what makes sense to me. So that's all I can do. We can only ever share our perspective and our experience. That's it. That's all we can ever do. And if someone disagrees with that, okay, everybody, you're allowed to have a different perspective. I don't really care. You know what I mean? If someone has a different explanation for something, okay, I accept it. I don't care. I'm giving it all up. I'm just trying to allow the divine to flow through me, right? I am God's eternal love pouring forth. I'm trying my best to just let it all go and try to empty my mind, right? At this point, I'm trying to empty my mind and let it all go. And because that's all there really is to do. Anytime we're trying to take in information, we're just clogging up the works from receiving higher messages and guidance and intuition and inspiration and all these things, right? So thank you for joining me, my friends. If you have any questions about any of my talks or the circle, I know there's a lot of questions around the circle. The circle's pretty great, isn't it? It's just such a great explanation from the Tao Te Ching. Stay in the center of the circle and allow all things to take their course. You know what I mean? It just boils it down. You got to give it all up, right? Your attachments to thinking you got to give it up, or else you'll never see the truth. You'll be stuck in lower perspectives thinking It's trying to tell us, right? He who thinks he knows is a fool. I can't find the quote. I swear I heard a quote that's like, he who thinks he knows is a fool. He who knows he does not know is a wise man. Something similar to that, right? You got to give up your attachment to knowing. Because if you think you're trapped. You're trapped in your ego. You're trapped in the illusion, and you're going to be stuck in lower perspectives. You're not going to be able to see the truth, and you're going to be blocking the divine from coming in. Right? If you're trapped in thinking you're knowing, if you're trapped in thought, if you're trapped in thinking you're somebody doing something, you're just going to be stuck. And we don't want to do that. That's why presence and purification is the way. Purify the body. It's not about what we're putting in so much as what we're taking out. We got to remove the obstructions from the body, right? We have to let the body do its thing and heal. That's why when you go on to raw fruits, berries, melons, and vegetables, you start detoxing, because your body's like, finally, you're not giving me the crap. I can start cleaning stuff out. I've had that experience over many years, right? And I feel better and better eating all fruits. I can only share my experience, right? That's it. If someone has a different experience with a different diet, okay. And there's a lot of explanations of why people feel certain ways on certain diets, X, Y, and Z. There's stimulating diets, right? And there's hydrating diets, there's acidic diets, and there's alkaline diets. We're alkaline based. You know what I mean? Again, I can only share my experience and what I've learned. That's all I can ever share. So thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I've been told I need to remind you in case you forget. If you want more content like this, if you have any certain subjects you would like to see videos about, I have quite a few videos in the pipeline. They're always coming. They're always coming. They keep coming. I have quite a few, right? And sometimes they kind of mix together when I'm trying to, well, I just think, oh, well, I got to add this. Well, I might as well add this in there too. It's all part of the same bag anyway, right? I thought about getting a big roulette board and just putting all my 50 things on it that my list keeps getting bigger, never gets much shorter, and just spinning it. And I'll do a video on that tonight, right? So I got a lot of other videos coming. I got a lot of important videos coming that help us understand things on the path of awakening. And remember, you can't really force understanding. So if you don't quite understand something I'm speaking about, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. Eventually, maybe you will. You know what I mean? Or if I don't resonate with you, that's okay. Maybe there's another teacher that will. You know what I mean? Ram Dass was my spiritual teacher. Even though I didn't know him personally, he resonated with me deeply. So I learned a lot from him. A lot of what he spoke about, I didn't quite understand at first for a long time until I did. You got to empty your mind to get understanding. You can't force understanding. You got to empty your mind to allow the understanding. Sometimes you got to keep reconstituting the mind. I've already made a video about how to reconstitute the mind. I'm going to make another one. You can't make enough videos on any of these subjects because they're very important, and there's always more I can add in different ways I can try to explain it to help people understand. You got to reconstitute the mind to start receiving deeper understandings of things, because our minds are too jammed full of garbage, and we keep taking in more. It's like trying to stuff 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag, right? Is the expression something like that? That's what we're doing by constantly taking information. So we're blocking the channels of communication with the divine. We're blocking the ability to get these more divine understandings in a lot of ways. So we got to let it all go. We have to stop taking in information, even books. If your intuition is calling you to watch a certain video or read a certain book, yeah, I'm not telling you to not do it. You do whatever you want. I'm just telling you from my experience, what helped me the most is my intuition led me to, all right, I can't. My mind was like literally just, I've literally felt, and I described to many people, it feels like my mind is full. And I just can't listen to anything, even if it's someone I used to listen to a lot, like Dr. Morse. I listened to Dr. Morse for endless hours, hundreds of hours probably, right? And Ram Dass. I got to a point where I couldn't even listen to them. I was like, my mind's full. I can't listen to anything anymore. The universe, my mind, the divine was telling me, you got to empty your mind. I didn't realize it. You got to reconstitute your mind. You got to stop taking the information. You may reach that point too. We're like, you know what? The real deep answers we're looking for are coming when you empty the mind, not when you take in more, right? Because also, a lot of times when we take in more, we're going to be stimulating thought, and we want to be present. So presence and emptying the mind, reconstituting the mind, is going to allow us to take in higher perspectives. It's going to allow us to break free our barriers, dissolve the ego, break free our attachments, and see higher perspectives. It's all about gaining higher perspectives. It's another video I was going to make called Gaining Higher Perspectives, but all my videos are basically about that, right? Because as we dissolve the ego in the present moment, as we empty the mind, we're gaining higher perspectives constantly. It's just every second we're in presence, we're just slowly moving toward God, right? Well, God is the present moment. God is the observer. We are God observing itself. Every second we're present, we're slowly moving. And the closer we get, the more we start to feel that divine energy and that divine guidance, right? And then we start to see more signs in the world around us, all these angel numbers and synchronicities and these hawks flying above me all the time. That God is just reminding me that our cosmic beloved is just reminding me that you're doing good. I'm here for you, right? These things like this, there's all these signs around us trying to tell us we're doing the right thing. Presence and purification. I've been on this path not a long time, 5 or 6 years. Well, unknowingly before that, in a way, because I was trying to eat better without knowing it, and I was doing certain things. I tried to meditate, but didn't quite stick a few times before that. And then finally, the universe forced me to start meditating because I reached a breaking point in my health, in my mental health, and my well-being, where I had to try something because the toxic medications just weren't cutting it. So this is all part of the journey, right? And it's about dedicating yourself to the journey too, right? You got to dedicate yourself to the presence and purification and not worry about time, right? How long is this going to take? It's about every moment, just doing it moment by moment, day after day, month after month, year after year, and just working on the presence and purification. Things will start to come around. This is how the awakening journey works. It can be difficult for a long time, and we can be confused, feel confused or lost because, again, we're probably taking in too much information and we don't know. There's a million different kinds of yoga. Which yoga should I do? There's a million different kinds of meditation. Which meditation? Just do whatever feels right for you at the time. And if something wants to change it, it'll change it. The universe changed it for me. I was doing all kinds of different meditations. I didn't know which meditation to do. I was just sticking with this one. I was following my breath. I was doing Wim Hof breathing, X, Y, and Z. And then the universe took Yogananda. He took Yogananda and said, here you go. Bam. Right? I was listening. I told the story many times. I love this story. I love Yogananda. I was driving in my car delivering food, listening to a spiritual video my friend sent me, and the dude mentioned Yogananda. And I've heard Yogananda from Ram Dass, right? And then I see this person who looks exactly like Yogananda driving a car right in front of me. And I'm just like, what? My mind was blown because he just said it when I was listening to it, and I just saw Yogananda. I'm like, what? The universe is specifically telling. This is the kind of signs we'll get eventually if we dedicate ourselves to the path of presence and purification and God's love and keep surrendering every day, right? I am God's eternal love pouring forth. That's our goal, is to be this unconditional love all the time of God. So I was like, all right, I know Ram Dass has mentioned Autobiography of a Yogi. I don't know. I keep telling this story. I'm sorry if you've heard it before. I'm going to listen to it because I just saw Yogananda driving a car, and I heard it, and I have to listen to it. So I listened to Autobiography of a Yogi, the audiobook, because even at that time I didn't have much time for reading. I could have read it, sure, but it was just I liked the guy who was reading it. He had a good voice. You know what I mean? It makes it easier. If someone has a voice that doesn't work with me, I can't listen to an audiobook. I don't really listen to many audiobooks. I don't listen to really much of anything right now, right? I said it. So if you got to reconstitute the mind, you got to stop taking it in. Unless you're getting some signs, unless you get Yogananda or someone else thrown at you, right? So I listened to Autobiography. At this point, I've listened to Autobiography of a Yogi, I don't know how many times, many, many times, because I get something different at a time. Every time. Remember, a lot of spiritual teachers you'll listen to, you might not get everything at first, but later down the line, as you start to empty your mind and raise your perspective and your consciousness, something might start to click. You might start to make sense. So that's kind of what happened to me. And then I was introduced to Kriya Yoga. So what I'm explaining is the universe guided me. I was kind of misguided for a long time, but I was still working on it. You still do meditation. Do whatever meditation feels right. Where focus on your breath, focus on the Theravada Buddhism. You do your stomach going up and down. Just do your best. Your thoughts are still going. My thoughts were going for a long time. And they still do sometimes in my meditations, right? My thoughts are just go. I'll have whole meditations where I'm just thinking, that's okay. Just who cares? Don't judge yourself. Just accept it. Let your mind work itself out. That's what reconstituting the mind are, right? You do what you do, and you do your best on the path of presence and purification, until you get some better signs and some better direction from the universe, from better guidance. You keep cleaning yourself out, you keep staying present, those signs will come for you, guaranteed. But remember, we got to open the channels of communication. We have to recognize and remove the aggravators, or else it's going to be hard to stop thinking and be present and open those channels of communication. We got to purify the body. We got to start to recognize the things that aren't so good for us and start putting things in that are good for us, that clean the body, that hydrate the body, right? So this is all part of the path. I know I kind of went off on a tangent here. Again, thank you guys so much for joining me on this path, on this journey. We are all in this together. We are here to help humanity escape the cycles of suffering through presence and purification. The divine has chosen me. Again, I had no idea what was going on for the whole time. My brain was clouded up in a fog of weed for many, many years. Even recently, I've been using it a bit because, again, it comes down to balance. And sometimes some of these things, you got to use them until you don't got to use them, right? And then eventually through purification, I had to stop using marijuana. I guess we're going to talk about this now. Why not? Because why? Because my body was started to kind of reject it. If you purify the body enough, even things like that, you might start. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be like this for everybody, but you're going to find these things that you're going to want to start to remove from your body. Like coffee for me, I had to eventually start to remove from my body because it was making things worse. And you find out what these things do to your body. Any kind of smoke we take in is not supposed to go in the lungs, right? You could take it other ways, and of course, but you can't be attached to anything either. Because if you're attached to, I read a study that said weed's good for me, you got to be careful because you got to listen to your body. Because if you're attached too long, it can eventually start to take you in the wrong direction. And I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying with anything, you got to let the divine lead you. That's all you got to do. Just surrender. Why do I even bother talking about anything? Just surrender, guys. That's all you got to do, right? Just let it all go. Just surrender. Sorry, my ears are getting hot. It's cold in my basement. I'm in my basement right now. Always stand in the center of the circle, guys. That's all we got to do, right? And I hope these videos can provide some sort of reassurance for you on your path. That's why I'm doing these. Because why am I really making these videos? Because I've been going through this path myself, and I know how hard it can be, how confusing it can be, how directionless it can sometimes feel, especially when we're just starting and we got all these aggravators and all this conflicting information. It can be very hard. So remember to use your intuition. Remember to do what feels right. You can muscle test things. Check out how to muscle test things. You can do a sway muscle test. I hope I'm not blocking my mic. Where you put your hands on your chest or you hold something, you say, should I do this thing? And try to stand still and relaxed. And if you sway forward, you do the standing up. Then it means yes. Or, sway, show me yes. If you sway forward, it's yes. Maybe I'll do a demonstration of that later. Do things like that. Remember, you just got to trust it. Do your best you can. If you do something that doesn't feel right, try something else. You know what I mean? Don't be attached to anything. Don't think because you saw someone you really like doing one thing means you got to be attached to it. If you might try it and you might not like it. Like I do Kriya Yoga because the universe forced that on. Not forced that on, it gave it to me and said, you might want to try this. Here's Yogananda. Why Yogananda? He's going to show me Kriya Yoga. He's going to not initiate me, but show me that I need to try Kriya Yoga because that's one of the main things he did. And so I learned about Kriya Yoga and I started practicing it. Why do I like Kriya Yoga so much? Because it has many aspects, right? We're dissolving fear. I have some videos, my How Do I Meditate video. I talk about it in Cleansing the Chakras video. You're cleansing the chakras. It helps balance. It brings balance by cleansing those chakras. It brings in bliss. It relaxes the body. It can bring in deeper states of meditation through the HRVR breathing, it's called, making your out breath longer than the in breath. I did the Wim Hof breathing for a while, but then it kind of started to not feel right for me because we're really not supposed to be hyperventilating. A lot of animals don't hyperventilate when they breathe. All animals breathe through their nose, even when they're running, unless they're off gassing, right? And I learned that from a guy, Brian Mirabella. So I could interview with him. But that just makes sense to me. We're supposed to breathe through our nose, right? All the time. And if we're hyperventilating, we're kind of stressing the body out. Again, you can't be attached to anything because there's always going to be studies saying, oh, this is good for you, this is bad for you, coffee is good for you, coffee is bad for you, alcohol is good for you, alcohol is bad for you. Don't be attached to anything. Try to use your common sense. Try to use your observation and your own experience. Let the divine guide you. Pray for meditation. Pray for guidance. Meditate. Allow the guidance. Ask the universe for guidance, and you will probably receive it, right? But you got to open these channels of communication, you guys. So let's wrap this video up. I thought it was going to be a 10-minute video. It's 35 minutes. That's okay. I'm trying to make at least one video a day. That's my goal of at least like 10-minute video. Sometimes I'll make the shorter ones. I know the shorter ones do better on some video sites, but I'm not attached. I'm not trying not to be attached to the outcome. Ready? Do your work and step back. I'm trying to do what I'm teaching. I remember I'm teaching myself as well. I learn a tremendous amount by teaching, by sharing these teachings, right? That these understandings that I'm starting to get. And I'll even watch some of my own videos, which is wild because I'm still understanding what I'm understanding, right? I'll explain some things. I understand it. But when I listen to myself explain it sometimes, I'm gaining more understanding, and it helps me make more connections. When you teach, that's why I have the quote, learn as you go, teach as you learn as you teach, because that's just the cycle, right? And feel free, guys, don't be afraid. If you unblock your throat chakra, right? To start sharing what you've learned from your experience, because you can probably help somebody, right? We can all help somebody because everyone's on different parts of the spectrum on the path of awakening, the path of consciousness. But we're not here to try to force anything on anybody. We're just trying to let it flow. This is me trying to let it flow, right? I'm just trying to listen to my divine guidance, trying to empty my mind and try to put out whatever I feel needs to be put out. What I was trying to put out, remember, whatever happens is always going to happen anyway. I was always going to make this video this time, this day, about this thing, saying these things, right? So that's just how it's going to be. I am God's eternal love pouring forth. Namaste.